how did you become the chair?
Yeah. I had my oldest son when I was in high school. I was 16 years old. And I was someone who was always ambitious, but when that happened, I needed community. I needed the power of community. I needed folks to give me support and invest in me, right? And so I actually learned from those people and started investing back in my community first through a program called AmeriCorps. And to be completely honest, it's a program of the National Community a service. It's a government initiative where young people devote a year of their life to service, and in return, they get all kinds of leadership skills around nonprofits. They help build community, but also they get money for college. And at that point, they got free daycare. Nice. So I'm like, this checks all the boxes, right?
This is it.
Right, I'm going to do this thing. It's going to help me figure out a way to pay for college. But I didn't realize I was going to fall in love with service, right? I didn't realize that I was going to fall in love with this responsibility to my community, right? I mean, we know it's Martin Luther King who says that service, right, is the rent we pay to live on this earth. And I learned that, and I saw how my story of struggle actually empowered other young people, particularly young women who were potentially walking in my path. And so that was my first real job in the nonprofit space. And then after that, I actually moved into the foundation space. I worked for a very prominent foundation for 10 years. First, I was raising money, millions of dollars for Black communities. And then was elevated to build out chapters and organizations that started giving money away. So I became a philanthropic expert. And people hear philanthropic and philanthropy and they think that's money. But to break that down, it comes from the Greek philos, which is love, and anthropos, which is of humanity. So when I say I'm a philanthropic expert, it means I love Black people. I love us. And because I have been given so much, I have a responsibility to give back. I devoted my life to service, working in foundations, eventually elevated to an organization where I was working with Black students who needed to be mentored or wanted mentors. It received a multi-million-dollar grant from the U.S. Department of Justice under a mentoring initiative, and then stepped back and said, I'm raising my 3 boys. I want to do this in a way that I can actually make a living doing it. Because as you know, as a nonprofit leader, even my own finances have been questions. I have filed bankruptcy as a single mother who had $120,000 in debt. $60,000 of it was student loans.
Wow.
And I have learned from those situations. I've learned how to do better. And in fact, when I disclosed that I filed bankruptcy before I came on this board, much of the crisis management team and legal advisors who are pulling this board together said, that's why we chose you. We chose you not because you're trying to come here to be successful, because you already are, despite what you've been through.
I love it.
And you can take all that you've learned to ensure that you are legitimately communicating and building programs that our people are going through and that we need. And so that's what I have done. Not only work for foundations, work for organizations, all of it I consider doing liberation work, but not necessarily on the front lines marching, right? And so I started my own company. It's called The Amplifiers. It's a philanthropic consulting firm after I left those 2 foundations. And what I say is I help people do good better. Right. And I worked with organizations like the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, the National Cares Mentoring Movement, the African American Policy Forum, Kimberly Crenshaw, the coiner of CRT. Those have been my clients behind the scenes. I worked on a project in 2019. This is my direct involvement with Black Lives Matter, called Reform LA Jails. It had very similar leadership, complementary leadership in LA, although I lived in Atlanta. And the goal of that campaign was to redirect money from the jail system, the LA County jail system, one of the largest mental health facilities in the world, to mental health initiatives.
Wow.
And they hired me to help do the communications work for that campaign behind the scenes. And in 2020, Measure R became law, and we passed it with 73% of the vote.
Amazing.
And so they saw that I may not have been on the front lines, right? But I was doing work strategically to build power in ways that had long-lasting impact. And so I remember in 2022 being in Atlanta and having a group of people in suits who came to sit and talk with me. And I said, why are y'all in Atlanta? And they said, we're here for you. We're rebuilding this board. And there were 10 people in a binder. I was one of them. My photo was there. My background was there. And they said, you are not only a mother who has raised 3 sons, 3 Black sons. You personally have a commitment. You have the professional acumen and also the passion and love for Black people to carry this forward. It's not going to be easy. And I knew it wasn't going to be easy. But none of this work is, and what that is worth it is. And I said, yes. It was actually my oldest son that I had had when I was 16, my man of Morehouse.
Yes.
I say often my children are my mirror and my compass. And I remember him sitting in my room and saying, you know, Black Lives Matters is forming a new board and they've come to me. And I didn't know at that point I was going to be voted board chair.
Right.
I thought I was going to be one of many people on this board to build it. And I looked at the finances and signed all the confidentiality paperwork. And he said, Mom, how can you not? You have been doing this work your entire life. You're built for this.
I love it.
And so it was my son, ultimately, who said to me, and I said, you know, I'm not a traditional activist in every sense of the word. And he said, but you're coming to this with a spirit of love. And you know, I said, well, I'm not someone who is necessarily ready for, you know, a fight. And I've had people in my love, people I love in my life who have told me not all walls are broken down with fists.
Ooh.
Right. And so I know for sure that it takes all of us